Did you know that college grads who are underemployed get 30% less callbacks for their resumes? Yep, the risks of underemployment are serious. Welcome back to my channel, the best place for ambitious millennial professionals who feel stuck in their careers to gain clarity to build their dream careers. In my last videos, I discussed what is underemployment and why it exists. Be sure to check them out so that you can get a real good context of this video's rationale, and I'll put it in the cards above. In this video, I'm going to dive into the risks of underemployment and why you really don't want to stay underemployed. The last effect is in fact the most important one, so make sure you stick around till the end to catch it. Make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell to receive regular updates on all things related to bringing a positive change to your career. Hi, I'm Dr. John Tam, and I'm passionate about helping ambitious millennial professionals build their dream careers. So without further ado, here are the 5 horrible effects of underemployment. Effect number 1, falling behind in your career, or even falling out. Now let's do a quick recap on the 3 types of underemployment. The first type is the work is a match, but it's part-time work instead of full-time work. You could be working more hours. The second type is the work that you're working full-time, but it's got nothing to do with your training, skills, and your long-term career goals. The third type is being disillusioned and not working anymore because you've given up on it. And definitely go back to my previous video explaining what is underemployment to get a really, full fleshed out explanation of what these things are. And I'll be sure to put it in the cards above. But regardless, any form of underemployment will rob you of skills and training you mastered in your education. If you're not getting the reps and experience in, do you feel that you'll stay in tip-top shape against your competition? And if you don't like the work, you'll also be less motivated. And unmotivated people struggle to do good creative work. And nowadays, being creative is definitely an important aspect of human capital. Also, not being able to keep up with relevant skills during these rapidly changing times really puts you at a disadvantage. Definitely check out my video on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation if you want to learn more about creativity's relationship with motivation. But regardless, the higher you go, the stiffer the competition. And at some point, the hard skills and the soft skills and the relevant experience and all the qualifications are going to be the differentiators on whether you're able to climb that corporate ladder or not. So when you're underemployed, when you're not enjoying what you do, or when you're not able to update your skills and experience to keep up, you will face the eventual roadblock of hitting a ceiling where you're not able to break through because you're simply not as passionate about it, right? And essentially, by doing that, you enter a vicious cycle of falling behind. So for example, if you're underemployed in one position, if you start in HR and you work as a generalist, and then you do that for 1 or 2 years, and then you shuffle into recruiting because it's a natural fit, but it's also a somewhat different animal. And then from recruiting, you switch to doing sales because what you're gonna realize is that when you do recruitment, you're actually selling candidates to corporations all the time. And then after some time, you'll start thinking like, hey, you sold candidates at one point, and so why don't you try sales in another line of work? So for example, you're selling medical devices, and so you're using sales skills in the medical field. And then afterward, you realize like, hey, actually, now that I'm doing a lot of medical stuff, why don't I become a medical consultant? And so you can see that because you were underemployed and not fulfilling your potential at the HR generalist position, you move to recruiting, and then you dabble in that for 1 or 2 years, and you move to sales of medical devices, and from that you dabble, and then you move on to another position. And basically over time, what you're gonna realize is that you're falling behind. You're a junior at everything, and you're not particularly a master of anything. Your networks become really diluted, and essentially you're not known to be an expert in anything. And when you hit a certain point in time, when you're in your 30s or 40s, it's like people who really stayed and really worked on one field and they're not underemployed in that field, what happens is that they're able to really grow and start flourishing, right? They start, they've moved out of the whole job hopping phase of their career, and they've really moved on to becoming managers or leaders, and they're really starting to drive things in their companies because they've really established themselves at that point, and they're not underemployed throughout the previous years, right? So essentially, it's a use it or lose it kind of world. If you're underemployed in one position, you don't want to stay underemployed for long because the negative effects will accumulate and bite you in the long run. Which brings me to my next point, which is the vicious cycle creates what we call a horn effect. And when you look at the research done by Nunley et al. In 2016, what the research found was that college graduates who are underemployed get 30% less callbacks for their resumes than those who were adequately employed with spells of unemployment. And this whole research points to the reality of something called the horn effect, which is the opposite of the halo effect, right? The halo effect is like, you're associated with something awesome and you have a halo around your head. When you have a horn effect, it's like you have horns growing out of your head because it sets you back with lasting effects. And the fact of the matter is, if you're underemployed, it's fine if you need to pay the bills. And we're all underemployed at one point in time, right? None of us can say we've had the perfect career at every stint. We've all got bills to pay. So I want to say this with the greatest degree of empathy and zero judgment. However, the horn effect is basically that underemployment will come back to hurt you in the long run. And if you accept being underemployed in the long term, why would people hire those who do not take the extra initiative or take the extra steps to grow, or something like find better work or better fulfillment in their work so that they can provide for their family and also take pride in what they do? And so the important thing is that even though being employed keeps you busy and it pays the bills, in the long run, underemployment is like quicksand. It will slowly suck you down and essentially sap you from your career. So you always have to be on your toes when you are in an underemployment situation to find that next stepping stone to pivot out of that situation. Simply put, it's okay to be underemployed because we all face that at one point in time, but don't settle for it. Don't let it keep festering. The third effect of underemployment is financial loss. So think of yourself being a fish, being judged for your lack of ability to climb a tree. You're essentially not playing in your zone of genius. And when you're not fulfilling your potential, you're not doing your best work. And as a result, you're probably not going to perform as well as you could in another line of work, and you won't be compensated as much as you could in another line of work. And the research for underemployment shows that the financial effects can last up to a decade. Learning how to evaluate your market value in tandem with learning effective negotiation skills can easily create a 15 to 20% gain in a single job switch rather than following the usual 3 to 5% raises that you get in your annual review, right? Now, add compound interest to these gains, and it's not surprising to find articles in monster.com talking about how people who know how to negotiate earn an upward of $1 million more in your lifetime if you start in your 20s. But how can you negotiate or even begin to pitch your value when there's no leverage that you can use in terms of your performance? And therefore, the result is financial loss, both immediately and also in opportunity cost, because you could be working in a job that is making you satisfied instead of making you feel underemployed. Do you feel like you're a fish being judged for its ability to climb a tree? Let me know in the comments below. The fourth effect is that it takes a toll on your mental and emotional health. Even if you don't have the financial loss and you get a job that pays the bills, there's going to be a long-term toll on your emotional and mental health. When you're someone with a lot of skills and talents, and all of us have a zone of genius, all of us do, and yet you can't fulfill your work potential, mental health issues such as the risk of depression, such as stress, such as a low self-esteem, such as self-doubt, all of these things would accumulate over time because you're not doing your best work, because you're not in your zone of genius. You're competing with monkeys on climbing a tree when you're in fact a fish. One of the most common symptoms of underemployment is actually the lack of having a career goal, right? Because at the end of the day, random efforts lead to random results. There's no sense of control of your career. You're like a ship at sea that's getting tossed around by waves at other people's whims. And so when you lack purpose, you lack meaning, you lack fulfillment, and it's not aligning to your values, goals, and your actual work and your actual skills, even if you get paid well in a cushy job, all of this in the end would lead to mental and emotional health problems. And this really puts people in a scarcity mindset where you think like, I've already put so much to be in this position. I've already sacrificed so much to be underemployed, to pay the bills and so on. And what makes the problem worse then is that you will have a sunk cost fallacy. And a sunk cost fallacy is when you feel like you've already invested so much in something. And the problem is you want to double down on it because you feel like you've already spent so much. You've already invested so much in an underemployed position that if you leave, you're going to lose the title. You're going to lose all the perseverance that you put yourself through. And as a result, you're going to get paralysis by analysis, and it makes it even harder to leave your underemployed position because essentially you're grabbing onto anything, that keeps you afloat, right? So it just puts you in a bad position. And I dive deep into this kind of mindset in my video where I talk about career change mindset. And so I would highly recommend you to check it out in the cards above if you want to start making progress on this today. Now, the fifth and final effect of underemployment is that it could actually eventually lead to unemployment. And the reasons are because of all the previous reasons of falling behind, of the horn effect, of being underpaid, of not being able to pay the bills, right? And if when you're not being able to pay the bills, you're put in a position of scarcity, and then you develop all these mental health issues and stress issues that when you put it all together, it could create kind of like the perfect storm where it's like the vicious cycle of eventually leading to unemployment because you fall behind in your skills, you're not doing your best work, you're not having the financial resources to provide for your family and reinvest in yourself, and the mental and emotional health strain. Underemployment overall adds on a whole bunch of undesirable elements to your life that could eventually lead towards unemployment or just giving up on your career, which is actually the untraceable type of underemployment that I mentioned in my first video. So if you want to get out of underemployment, the very first step is to gain career clarity and have some tools to help you. First of all, I would highly recommend you to take a free, quick, and accurate career personality test in the description below using the Big 5 personality traits, where it outlines what are the best workplace characteristics for you. The second resource that I have is a guide on how to find your dream career, which helps you set a target on where is that dream career and how can you get there. I also highly recommend you to check out my free training on how to find your dream career, and all this is in the descriptions below. Make sure to also join my Facebook group, Career Change Advice, to be in a community of people interested in making their careers work for them rather than the other way around. In my next video, I'm going to teach you actionable steps on how to stop being underemployed. So make sure you subscribe and click the bell for updates for when it comes out. Also, leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to give this video a like and share it with your network if you found this to be valuable.